Okay, so here we go. Your square root of 16 is just 4. Sometimes people get confused and think that it's two answers, 4 and negative 4. But when you use this sign right here means the positive, or it's otherwise known as the principal square root. And the principal square root is the positive one. Okay, so when you see that sign, it is just 4. But do you get how there are two things that would answer this equation? 4 is one of them, and also negative 4. So that's the situation where you'd have two answers. You could do this problem, x squared equals 16, in 3 different ways. In fact, probably 4. All right, one way is you could use a quadratic formula on it. To use a quadratic formula, you'd switch it over to x squared minus 16 equals 0, because you got to have it in that form. And now I'd say a is what? 1. What's b in this case? 0. There's no b. And c would be negative 16. Okay, so then I stick that into the quadratic formula. It gives me the answer. But there's another way. In fact, there's 2 other ways. Here's a way. I could factor it. Remember this? X plus 4, x minus 4. And then I got 2 answers. Negative 4 would make this part 0. Positive 4 would make that part 0. So it's negative and positive 4. Again. What's another way? Well, if I graph it, it's going to look like this. And guess where it touches? Positive and negative 4. Okay, so that's a third way. Is there even another way? Yes, there is. If I want to solve this one, this is the part we didn't talk about, and I want to talk about because we do this a lot in pre-calc, is square root, and then everybody, and seriously, we've had it on the test 3 times, and some kids have missed it all 3 times. They just assume, oh, square root of x squared is x, equals square root of 16 is 4, and they write that down, and they get it wrong. Because it's really got 2 answers. We already established that. It's 4 and negative 4, sorry. But why? Because when you take the square root of a variable, it is equal to absolute value of. I've already said it to you enough times that you guys are getting pretty good at this. You knew it was the absolute value. And then that splits into 2 parts. X equals 4 and x equals negative 4 to solve it. And the way you could think of that is what has to be inside underneath the blue there is either a 4 or a negative 4. All right. So now, I want you to do it that last way with this problem. Write that down. X minus 5 quantity squared equals 25. Now, could you multiply that all out with FOIL and everything? Yes, but don't. There's a faster way. How do you get rid of a squared? Square root. If I do the square root of this side and square root of that side, square root of 25 is 5. It's that simple. But on the other side, when you do the square root when there's a variable, what do I need? Absolute value of x minus 5 equals 5. You see what I just did there? Now, I have to split that into 2 parts. Either this part is equal to 5, or this part is equal to negative 5. X minus 5 equals 5. X minus 5 equals negative 5. And now I can solve it from there. Paper. Okay, get going. Hurry up. All right, now I'm going to add 5 to both sides. I get x equals 10. Add 5 to both sides, and x equals 0. Do you get how, if I put in a 0 right here, I would get the right answer? The absolute value of negative 5 would be 5. And if I put a 10 right here, do you get how I would still get 5? It works. All right, so I want you to try solving this one then. X minus 6 equals 144. Sorry, squared. Otherwise, you just add 6 to both sides to be done. How do you get rid of that squared now? Square root it. And when you square root it, what's the part you can't forget? Absolute value. And that's what everybody in pre-calc has been forgetting this year. So tell me what to do. And you get? Good. Now what? All right, so how do you do this last part though? Nope. Nope. First you got to do something. You got to split it into two. If you don't do it this way, you will goof them up later when they get more complicated. I know you can try to do shortcuts in your head, but you need to split it into two. X minus 6 and x minus 6. They both say the same thing on the left. They both have an equal sign. The only difference is it's the opposite on this side. Okay, because later there's going to be like this. That kind of a thing. And then if you are just trying to do it in your head quick, it won't work. But if you do it this method I'm showing you right now, it'll work just fine. You write two equations out. And this equation you solve. And this equation you solve. And you got negative 6 and positive 18. Raise your hand if you had those right. Okay, good. So now, there is another way we could have solved this problem. And you'd still get the same answers. But there's another way. What do you think I could have done? Yes, FOIL it out. X squared, first outside, inside, last, because that's really this. And I'd have x squared minus 12x plus 36 equals 144. Am I ready to put in the quadratic quite yet? No, got to get this over to the other side. Then I could do quadratic formula on it. Could I have graphed it? Yes. What about the kind that come out with a negative under the square root? When you graph them, can you see the answers? No. So graphing only works when it actually touches. All right, so this one would touch. It touches at 6 and at negative 6, because I know that because when no, wait, no, not necessarily. That equals 144. So this one might not graph nice. In fact, let me think. It's a quadratic, and its y-intercept is really big. I don't think it would graph. It would give you the answer from graphing. It would be, no. How about this? I'm going to subtract this. It will be negative 144 minus 36, 108. Thank you. And then I'd have equals 0. And then if I put that into the quadratic formula, it's negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. And a is 1 and c is negative 108 all over 2a. It'll graph, because look in here. That's the discriminant. Is it going to come out positive or negative? Positive. So it will graph and give me an answer. Two answers, in fact. But if I just finished with the quadratic formula, I'd have it. I'd probably need a calculator, though, because I don't know what 4 times 108 plus 144 and then the square root of that. I don't know what that is. All right. So if we were going to do this one, there's another way. Yes, I could start by subtracting 4 and taking the square root. That's one way. Do you get what I'm talking about there? Minus 4 and the square root. I also could do the quadratic formula. That always works. There's another way. Who remembers it from yesterday? I'll give you a hint. That is factoring, and it is the zero product property. Both answers are right. But what is the answer? What do I put in there? X and an X, a plus and a minus, and it's not 4. Not 4 either. It's 2i, because it's a plus here. Remember this? All right. So now, what are the answers? Negative 2i and positive 2i. Could I have gotten that by going through the quadratic formula? Yeah, it would have taken a lot longer, though. So it's smart to have different ways to do it, because different problems go faster different ways. Graphing this one's pretty much useless because it looks like that, and you can't see what the answer is. See what I mean? All right. So you just need to know a lot of different ways to solve problems, because some of them, you can't just say, well, I'm going to graph them all. They won't all work. The one thing you can do on every problem is what? On every quadratic, you can use the quadratic formula. It always works. That's the beauty of it. Now, it does get complicated sometimes, messy, but all right. Here are your only 3 problems that we have to do for today. The first one is I want you to do one more of those plus box, minus box deals. So write that in vertex form. This is on a blank sheet of paper, like a worksheet, sort of like you're making your own worksheet. So write down these 3 questions. I want you to solve this one 3 different ways. The ways that you could choose from are graphing, square rooting, let's see, factoring, and quadratic formula. I want you to find the answer in 3 different ways. The reason I don't say 4 different ways is sometimes there's a way that doesn't work, like it doesn't factor, or the graph of it wouldn't give you the answer. So solve this in 3 of these different ways, and solve this in 3 different ways. Okay, that's your only extra homework for today. This was meant to be assigned with section 7.5b, but we've already done that in my classes, so if you haven't done that already, kids that are watching at home, you need to do worksheet 7.5b on complex numbers.